Hey guys, welcome back to the Slippery Slope. This episode will be another donkhouse online session that took place on March 10th. The blinds are the usual Hong Kong dollar 5 and 10 with starting stack of 100 big blind, which is equivalent to around 130 US dollar. So I got a lot of hands to cover today, so let's get started right away. First hand, I opened up the action with ace queen from the hijack position to 30 and button, small blind, and big blind all call. Flop comes 4 ace queen with 2 spades. Small blind and big blind both check. On this board, since I smashed it pretty hard, I went for a smaller sized bet of 1/3 of the pot and only the button calls. Turn comes a 9 of clubs. I continue to bet for value, but this time a bit bigger with 143, around 2/3 of the pot. Button now thinks about it and calls again. River comes a jack of heart, which is not too bad of a card, and I think with top 2 pair I can extract more value from possible ace pair with lower kicker or even better lower 2 pairs. So I bet around 356, which was 3/4 of the pot. Unfortunately, button didn't think too long before folding. Around 20 minutes later, I pick up king-queen offsuit in the hijack position. There is a UTG raise to 30 and the early position players both fold. So I can definitely 3-bet in this spot, but given UTG player's stack isn't too deep, I decided to just flat call, cut off button, and the blinds all call as well. So we go 6-way to a flop of deuce jack 10 with 2 hearts. I picked up an open-ended straight draw and 2 overcards, which is pretty good. The blinds check, and interesting enough, can from the UTG position also checks. Given this is a multi-weight pot, I decided to check as well. Cut off and button both check. Turn comes a 6 of diamond, which is pretty much a blank. The blinds check again, and now the UTG player leads out with a bet of 123, a fairly large bet. It's interesting that can check the flop and let out on the turn in this multi-weight pot, but I really couldn't think of any strong combos he would do this with. I think any over pairs, ace jack or sets would be betting on the flop. So with that said, I decided to raise, but I made a terrible mistake of sizing a mid raise to 265. At this point, I'm just praying that he will fold, but of course he ends up calling. So will Poker God save my ass again on this river this time?
I don't think so, pal.
River comes an 8 of spade. He checks to me and I just have to continue my bluff. So I bet out 361, which is a pretty big chunk of his remaining stack. After tanking for a while, he decided to call and shows queen jack of clubs for a good pair of jacks. Well, I just got completely destroyed. A few orbits later, I pick up pocket 10s in the small blind position. There's a UTG min raise to 20 and Draymond from +1 calls. Given I'm out of position, I decided to 3-bet to a larger size of 110. Big blind and UTG both fold, but Draymond decides to call. Flop comes 5-5-3 with 2 hearts. So this is not a terrible flop for this situation, as it's unlikely to have hit Draymond's 3-bet call range from his +1 position. So I let out with a bet of around 100. Draymond thinks about it and calls again. Turn is an interesting card, which is the ace of spade, but given the action so far, I'm not too worried about the ace hitting Draymond because he usually 3-bets with strong ace holdings from his +1 position. So I'm putting him more on flush draws or small pairs. Since I would prefer to take down the pot on this turn, I decided to jam all in for 423 and Draymond ends up folding. As the smallest stack on the table, I pick up ace-jack offsuit in the UTG position and raise to 40. Cut off button and big blind all call, so we go 4-way to a beautiful flop of 3 jack-jack with 2 spades, blessing me with trip jacks. I c-bet with a smaller sizing of 66, and seems like button and big blind both hate money because they both call. So I guess one of them is on a spade draw of some sort, or also trip jacks with a lower kicker. Turn comes the 6 of clubs and big blind checks again. This time I'm going to bet bigger to charge for the spade draws, so I bet out 143, which is around 2/3 of the pot. Button folds and the action's back on big blind, who to my pleasant surprise goes all in. I of course snap call, and the river comes the deuce of heart, and big blind shows pocket 7s for a bluff. So I take down a huge pot, pushing my stack to 1600. Next hand, I have king jack of clubs in the hijack position. Ken from UTG raises to 30 and funny game from +1 calls to 30. King jack suited is a pretty good combo to 3-bet with in late position as it plays well post flop. So I decide to 3-bet to a larger size of 130, and out of nowhere, Draymond from the button position calls my 3-bet. which sounded off some alarms in my head. UTG and +1 both call as they are priced in now, so we go 4-way to a flop of ace 5-5 with 2 spades. This is a pretty terrible flop for my hand in this situation, and Can and Funny Game both check, so I check as well, and Draymond checks too. Turn comes a 10 of heart, and now Can leads out with 191, so there's nothing I can do here but just fold. Next, I wake up with ace queen of diamonds in the UTG position and I raise to 40. Only the cutoff player calls and we go to a flop of ace 6 to rainbow. So with top pair here, I c-bet for 1/3 of the pot and cutoff calls. Turn comes a 6 of heart, not too good of a card as cutoff could have called my flop c-bet with a 6 pair, but this particular player is also the type to start betting once he spots some sign of weakness. He could also have ace pair with a weaker kicker in the spot. So considering all of that, I thought check calling here would be the best approach. After I check, he bets out for 112 as expected. I call and river comes jack of diamond, which is a brick, as I think any ace jack or pocket jacks would have 3-bet me pre-flop from the cutoff. Again, no need for me to bet as I will be happy to just check call. So I check it to him and he bets again for 250. I didn't think too long before calling and he shows king 4 of spades for complete air. I was card dead for the next 20 minutes until the best thing that could ever happen to a poker player on the button position. Pocket aces. Even better, Potato Man from +1 raises to 30 and it folds back to me. Just like how I would play my suited connectors and other trashy hands on a button, I 3-bet to 90. Small blind player calls my 90 and the action is back on Potato Man, with then 4 bets to a large size of 400. So I can definitely 5-bet here, but it would just look way too strong because to be very honest, it's rare to have a 5-bet range against early positions. I'm also sitting pretty deep, so I would prefer to play post-flop, especially when I also have position on the villain. So I just call the 400 and small blind folds. Flop comes 2-6 jack with 2 diamonds. So other than losing to pocket jacks, this board is actually really good as I don't block any of the diamonds. Potato Man c-bets for 500, which I happily call. Turn comes a 5 of spade, and now Potato Man slows down and checks. With only 1,000 behind and the pot is already 1,900, there's nothing else to do but just jam here. So after fake tanking for a few seconds, I went all in, hoping that he has some sort of overpair or flush draw that can't fold. Facing this all in from me, Potato Man tanks for super long and then asks me whether this hand will be featured on the vlog. And after using up all of his time, he made the right fold. Not sure what he had, but possibly ace king, ace queen, or pocket tens. The next hand is pretty interesting. Draymond from +1 raises to 30 and it folds back to me on a small blind where I have 2-5 diamonds. This is good enough to call, but then big blind does something really weird and raises to 50. Draymond calls and now I'm also priced into call. Flop comes 7-4-7 with 2 diamonds. I check and big blind c-bets for 75. Draymond calls again. With a baby flush draw, I guess it's mandatory to call. Turn comes a queen of clubs. I check again and now big blind bets even larger with 375. Which is a pot size bet. Interestingly, Draymond calls again. So being out of position and also with a small flush draw, I thought it's safer to just fold here. Even if a diamond comes on the river, I could still be beat by higher flushes or slow play full houses. So I fold and river comes a 9 of diamond. Big blind now slows down and checks. But Draymond throws out a pretty small bet of 400. Big blind didn't think too long before calling and Draymond shows 8-7 of clubs for trip 7s and big blind shows pocket kings. So I guess I would have won with my small flush on the river, but I'm also fine with folding on the turn to avoid a sticky situation just in case they did have a big hand. Next, I pick up king 10 offsuit in the cutoff position. Everyone else before me folds, so I raise to 30. Button calls and big blind also calls. Flop comes queen 10-5 rainbow. Draymond checks. This is a pretty good flop for me to c-bet on with my middle pair, so I bet 1/3 of the pot for 32. Button folds, but Draymond calls. Turn comes the 2 of clubs, and Draymond checks again. There's no reason for me to slow down yet, so I bet 78 for around half pot, and he calls again. River now comes another queen, which is a really good card because I am almost certain that he doesn't have a queen in this spot. He checks again, and I bet 209 to get value from any 10 holdings with a lower kicker or lower pocket pairs. But Draymond didn't think too long before folding. Shortly after the king 10 hand, I have ace queen in the +1 position, and I standard open to 40. +2 calls my raise, but Potato Man decides to punish both of us and 3-bets to 160. Since I'm going to be out of position and both Potato Man and I have pretty deep stacks, I decided to just flat jack call and not blow up the pot too much pre-flop. Plus 2 player folds and the flop comes 2-3 queen rainbow. I check it over to my aggressor and he also checks. Turn comes a 6 of spade, which is a brick, but adds potential flush draw to the board. I lead out for 146, around 40% of the pot. Potato Man thinks about it and then calls. River comes the 8 of clubs, another brick card unless he somehow has pocket 8s. At this point, I'm putting him on hands like pocket 9s, 10s, or jacks, but at the same time, I also feel like he would bet on a flop with those hands, so it's a bit hard to put him on a exact hand. Ace King or Ace Jack will also make sense. Anyway, I decided to lead out again with a bet of 330, and now Potato Man goes into the tank. It looks like he has a pretty tough decision to make as the clock is counting down, but eventually he decides to let it go and fold. Next hand, I pick up 6-8 of spades in the small blind position. UTG limps in for 10 and +1 raises to 40. I thought about 3-betting in this spot, but ended up just calling. Big blind folds and UTG calls. Flop comes 7-4-9 with 1 spade. This is a really good flop for me to check raise with, as I can continue to barrel on the turn if any spades, 10s, or 5s come out. So I check, and interestingly, Wild Fat Cat from UTG leads out with 62, and Potato Man folds. I stuck with my original plan and check raise to 218, which Wild Fat Cat snap calls. Turn comes a 8 of heart, which is a bit of an awkward card for me as now I have a pair of 8, so there's less incentive for me to barrel on the turn. This 8 also completes some of the straight combos and improve hands like 7-8 and 8-9, so I decided to check and see what he does, but he also checks. Turn comes a jack of clubs, which completes the straight for any hands I have a 10. I check again, and Wild Fat Cat checks back as well, and shows ace-9 for the winner. A few orbits later, we decided to do a double board bump pot, so we all put in 2 big blinds and we skip pre-flop action and go straight to 2 boards. I have 8-10 of clubs in a cutoff position. Top board comes out with 3-7-9 rainbow and bottom board comes out with 10-7-2 of 2 diamonds. So I have an open-ended straight draw on the top and top pair on the bottom, which is a very decent outcome for my hand. Everyone before me checks, so I check as well, but Sen Quads from the button position puts out a small bet of 50. Now small blind, big blind, and hijack player all call the 50. Given I have outs on the top board to a straight and I still have top pair on the bottom board, along with backdoor flush potential, I check raise to 300, to which only Sen Quads decides to call. Turn comes a 8 of heart on the top and a 4 of diamond on the bottom, which is a terrible card as flush draws just got there. Since Sen Quads called my check raise on the flop, I think he's unlikely to fold to a turn bet. I gave up and just checked, and he checks as well. River comes a 4 of clubs on the top and 6 of spade on the bottom. I check again, and he happily checks back as well and shows pocket queens to take down the pot. So looking back, it was good that I gave up on the turn, as he would have called me down even if I bet pretty big on the turn.
That was a close one.
Next hand, I have King Jack offsuit in the cutoff position. Everyone before me folds, so I raise to 30. Small blind and big blind both call. Flop comes 3-2 Jack with 2 clubs. A pretty wet board with flush and straight draw possibilities, so I c-bet on a larger end with 54. Both small blind and big blind call. Turn is a 7 of heart. The blinds check to me again. Given no hands really improved on this turn card, I can continue to bet for value from all the draws and jack pair with lower kicker. So I bet around 200 into 250. This time, only Potato Man calls. River comes at ace of diamond, and Potato Man checks to me again. This card looks scary because it does complete a straight if the villain has 4-5, but that's really the only combo that I'm scared of. Given the sequence of the action, I feel like I can still get some thin value from hands that have jack pair with a weaker kicker. With that in mind, I went for a smaller sizing of 1/3 of the pot on the river and bet 211. If Potato Man check raises me, then I'm prepared to fold my hand. After tanking for a while, he ends up calling and I show my King Jack, and it seems like I'm good. Right after the King Jack hand, I pick up pocket 10s in the hijack position, and there is a UTG raise to 30 from Funny Game. I 3-bet to 90 and it folds back to him, who then 4-bets to 235. Given this is a 4-bet from the UTG position, it does feel pretty strong, so I just called in position. Flop comes 4 King 4 with 2 hearts. Funny Game c-bets for 125 on the smaller end, and I call. Turn is a deuce of clubs, but now he checks to me, and I'm happy to check it back. River now comes a jack of spade, but he leads out with 269. So usually bet, check, bet is a pretty strong sequence, but given he gave me such a cheap price to call, I threw in the chips and I was hoping that I can beat some missed flush draws. Turns out that Funny Game does have a clubs flush draw, but he also had the king along with it. Next hand, there is a UTG limp for 10, and it folds back to me on the button with king 9 offsuit, so I raise to 50 and the UTG player calls. Flop comes an overkill of queen 9-9. UTG checks, and I bet around 1/3 of the pot, and he calls. Turn comes the 3 of clubs, but now he donks out for 109. So this is the same player from hand 6 who has a tendency to barrel, so I just flat call, and holding the king of clubs also lessens the likelihood that he has a strong flush draw. River comes a 10 of spade, and the villain continues with a pretty large bet of 305, which of course I snap call, and he shows ace-6 of clubs for a missed flush draw. For the last hand of this episode, I have king 5 of diamonds in the +1 position and I raise to 30. Potato Man 3 bets to 100 from the button and I call. Flop comes 4-6 queen with 1 diamond and I check and he c-bets for 100. With my particular hand is either a fold or a raise because there are plenty of good turn cards that I can continue barreling with, such as any kings, 7s, 3s, or diamonds. I can also rep all of the small sets with my check raise. So I check raise to 280 and Potato Man calls. Turn comes one of the best cards in the deck, the 3 of diamond, giving me a straight flush draw. So I barrel with a large bet of 582. In the chat box, Potato Man says he doesn't believe that I have anything strong, which is a super good read on his part. But he wants to sleep now, so he will just fold his hand. Whew, luckily I got this bluff through. After that hand, I played a few more orbits before cashing out as it was getting late in the night. Overall, it was an extremely good session where Poker God gave me really good hands and safe runouts. I was in for 1,000 and cashed out for 2,644, so with a profit of 1,644. As always, if you enjoyed this video and the hands I covered, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. The next episode will be a live game, so please stay tuned for that. That's it for today. Peace out.